we see vesting a lot here. Not only does it sit within the ESOPs that we talked about earlier or those employee share schemes, but from a founder's perspective, what it means is that whilst I might hold my shares in my name and they've been issued to me and ASIC shows that I'm an owner of shares, I've signed a contract to lock those shares up for a period of time. And not only do I lock the shares, but I lock some of the rights attached to those shares. And as long as I stay in the business for a period of time, and occasionally with employees or advisors, they're attached to KPIs and milestones as well. But from a founder perspective, it's really about time. So I've agreed to lock my shares up, and I can unlock components based on the amount of time I remain with the company. So typically we see what's called a 12-month cliff, and then a portion per month for another period of time. So quite standard we see is 3 or 4 years. So for 4 years, you know, after that first 12 months, you go from 0 shares to 25% of the amount that you were originally issued. And you can keep those, you can sell them within reason. You can receive a dividend on them if startups ever pay dividends. But you really have the legal benefit of those under that contract now. And then for the following 36 months, which brings you to 4 years, often you'll unlock one very small percentage per month until you hit the 4-year anniversary, and then arguably 100% of them are fully owned by you. You can transfer them, sell them, receive dividends, do whatever you want. The reason that exists is because either at inception, when the company was first set up, the founders agreed that they would lock up their equity so they're incentivized to stay, or an investor has come along and said, you both hold all of your shares, we want to incentivize you to stay and we don't want you to be able to leave. And if you leave, we want there to be consequences, which I'll touch on in a second. So they will expect founders to lock up either all or part of their equity as well under those kind of vesting terms. And they'll normally sit within the shareholders agreement, or sometimes separately if the founders had a side agreement, you know, something called a vesting deed, or they sign a side letter, for example. And now the consequences side means that if I leave during that 4-year period, especially if I leave within the first 12 months, those shares that I have locked, which are called unvested, they can be bought back by the company without me having to agree to it for $1, typically, something very nominal. Because the argument is I haven't yet earned those shares, so I shouldn't get whatever the market value is. Those that I have unlocked, sometimes the documents will give the company the ability to buy those back as well, and either cancel them or have them transferred to existing shareholders. And that will typically be at market value, unless I leave as what's called a bad leaver. So that's where I'm removed from the business, or I leave and go and work for a competitor, for example, and breach my restraints. In those circumstances, depending on the severity of the terms, the company can either force me to sell them back or use a power of attorney to buy them back on my behalf for a really low value or a discount on fair market value. So when I say severity, I've seen buybacks at a 90% discount. Even after 4 years, if I've been working in the business and done great things, and and let's be honest, bad leaver, I have to do something pretty bad. So it's criminal. It's something that would normally mean that your employment would be instantly terminated for cause. So significant harassment, bullying, violence, whatever it might be. They're not a small thing that I've done to be booted, but we see discounts anything from 10 to 30 to 50, but very rarely do we see 90 or even, buy back everything for $1, which is quite significant. So that's typically what the vesting component means. But at its core, it's to say, well, understandably, a founder comes in early and, does a lot of great work, doesn't get paid for it. But as investors start putting money into the business, they need to know that you're going to stick around to help grow that business. And if you leave halfway through, then they might need to use the remaining equity that's locked to bring on someone else to replace you so that the business survives and potentially can go on to do things without you involved. So that's really why that vesting kind of exists. So, we encourage founders to talk about vesting for themselves at the early stage, because, the same thing can happen if founders have a dispute and one founder leaves. Then you've got someone sitting on the sidelines who owns half of your company that you either have a terrible relationship with, or they just no longer have any interest in helping the business. But they get half of all of the benefit and can make half of the decisions. So it's important to discuss early and have a real think about it.